And welcome back to The Way of the Wandering Wizard. I am, as always, Robert Andrew Meredith Kennedy, although most folks know me as Bob the Wizard. I am a pure and open channel for the finest vibrations of divine love and light, made manifest here in service to Gaia and those who travel with her. This channel is a space where I've been able to share my journey, thoughts, insights, as I've recovered from a near-fatal accident back in 2012, an out-of-body experience which clearly changed my life. Tonight's little videoette is entitled Back in the Saddle and was the first steps into the wizard you see sitting before you. Frame free, I started to build stamina the way that I always have, phototherapy and help with the lads. We'd go off on much further photo trips abroad. Well, actually, yeah, abroad. Visited France, but we started travelling further afield. Was able to walk further and further with a stick, as the crutches slowly became no longer required. I was deemed fit enough for work. At that point, my insurance company, looking towards settlement, sent down a rehabilitation advisor who sat down and asked me to give him a CV, a brief overview of my life and my life skills. He got an abridged version, pretty much of what some of you have sat through hours of. I had a diverse set of skills. One skill set straight off. I'm a Reiki master teacher. I carve crystal wands. Mindfulness and meditation practitioner. Although it's hard to describe some form of trauma therapy, over the years I felt that I'd been in an ideal position as a trauma counsellor. I'd certainly experienced trauma. And so what I wanted to offer was metaphysical services. I also explained that I had plenty of rural skills. I'd just been a lands warden beforehand. I could use a saw, all of that practical, hands-on forestry, estate management, that kind of work. I could do the backwoods skills, carve wooden bowls and wooden spoons, which had kept me busy through an awful lot, if I'm honest, through my recovery. Some craft therapy when I was fit enough to do so, just sitting and whittling spoons, as we've done around fires forever. Well, he sat and nodded sagely to many diverse skills, not to mention role play and so much more besides. And so he suggested that I started my own self-employed company. Clearly I'd needed to ebb and flow the way that I worked for my own recovery. I wasn't jumping straight back into the saddle of work again. I was still carrying a lot of injuries, still do. So I had to develop a different way of working. Hence the birth of Ravenswood Services, an umbrella organisation to cover everything from mind and soul support facilitator, inverted commas wizard, through to forestry worker. Over the course of that summer, when I started getting tools and started working again, I went to the GT barbecue, caught up with the old team, blagged my job back, and so whenever courses were running, I slowly reintroduced myself and started to become a full-time member of the operations team back at Ground Truth. Great days of my recovery, but it's my intention to cover role play, or recovery through role play, as a complete videoette in a few days to come, once I've worked out what I can and can't say. Naturally, a big step in my recovery would be getting back on two wheels. I've never been one to avoid a challenge. I don't like to fight, but I'm certainly not going to back down from a challenge. And getting back on two wheels was something that I was nervous, I was frightened of. I was frightened of something, I had to tend to face it. It's in my nature. Well, the bike, the new donor bike, with many, many bits, handlebar clamps, a few pieces, the gear shift, a foot peg or two from my old donor bike had made it onto my new bike. It was sprayed up, the same beautiful paint job that was done. All bear paws and tribal wings, it's glorious. But enough said about Shadowfax, as he's now named. The bike was there, and well, there's no point in having a bike if you're not going to ride it. Facing my fear, the brothers took me down as always. It's Dave this time, bless him, drove me down with my crash helmet, ready to get back on, or back in the saddle again. He did the best thing ever. Here if you need me, off you go and deal with it. And that was it. Bike was wheeled out, and I was ready to get back on two wheels again. Now, bit of a challenge, mentally, for a moment there. First time I sat back on the bike. There's that moment of tension, but eased in, the bike started, and I very somewhat gingerly paddled my way out to the road. I think the first minute I was not comfortable. The second minute I was, yeah, I'm alright. By the time I'd done a couple of familiar circuits around the dealership where I rode so many miles before, I was back in the saddle again. The body remembers. I was nervous, but I was feeling good. At times I went off for a long ride. Now, I decided if you're going to get back in the saddle again, you may as well face your fears in one hit. And I was going to ride back past the scene of the accident on the Virgin ride, first ride out. Well, stopped, rolled myself a smoke, set my head, and I rode back past the accident, ready for anything flashing back, any panic attack. And I was tense, but I rode past it quite well, so I thought, oh, I've gone past it in one direction. Bike on cue, every time. I then turned around and rode back on the direction that I was travelling, and I'll be honest, I was literally the same approach. Blow me. Wasn't silver, but a white car came flying up to the junction. I was just literally going, all right, you're going to face your fear and you're going to relive the accident, literally. Thankfully, this time the car stopped and had seen and heard me. I was ready to shout anyway. Finger on the horn. That adrenaline, that moment of fear, broke something. Something, that initial first facing, broke. So I rode backwards and forwards a couple of times and then went out the next day and the next day until eventually I was riding past it with caution but without any kind of triggers. It took a bit of work, but I got myself back. Just to be back out on a bike again, back to what the bike is for me. The freedom, out alone, no noise apart from the engine notes, the wind, focused on the road. It was just good to be back. Over the course of the summer I rode more and more. I did have a moment without good lady pillioned, and we were caught in a rainstorm, and the ride back was slippy and slidey. I was nervous about hurting me, I was nervous about hurting her, I was nervous at every car that came close on a roundabout, and I have to say that was probably my first little PTSD moment. Yeah, definitely something came up. Massively over defensive. I then went out and rode some dry miles, worked it through, and that was how I recovered and got back in the saddle again. It really was a process of putting myself back through things until I was able to face the fears and just get on with things. Now, I did have a few moments on the bike, I'll be honest. I wouldn't say they were full PTSD triggers, so I'll finish on this one. On one particular occasion, I was filtering down a line of traffic just off the forest, and on spying a gap, I roared round and tucked myself in. Now, the gentleman in the car, who was a little bit slow to close his gap, quite rightly was rather irritated that all of a sudden his gap had closed and there was a loud noise bike in front of him. And so he leant on the horn, opened the window, and he called me a very rude word. I don't know if I'm allowed to even say such a thing on a channel like this. Well, anyway, let's just say he called me a see you next Tuesday. And for some reason that triggers me at times, as it can many people. I'm on the brakes, that flash, which we can all get on the roads, but I was cautious that it would be driven by something. So I dropped into my breathing pattern, nicely calm, kicked down the side stand. I'm quite low on the bike, and I stood up, walking towards him with my crash helmet on. His good lady got out of the car, video in hand, ready to, don't know, whatever was likely to unfold on the Mexican standoff. I don't think he was expecting when, in my politest accent, I turned around, I'm terribly sorry, old boy. Don't know what came over me. I was rushing for the outside of the traffic. I know I've pulled in. I know I've upset you. And just was a completely reasonable human being, which somewhat disarmed him. His wife still videoing. He sort of turned round, grudgingly, and started to walk away. As he walked away, I turned around and said, no, I think I've been more than reasonable. To which he turned around and said, what? I said, no, I believe you owe me an apology for calling me a see you next Tuesday. At which point, his wife turned round and went, do you know what? Video's going off, you're on your own, because if you don't accept that and apologise, it's the last time I ever do this. Clearly it happened before, when two road rages meet. Anyway, a little tale of what it's like to overcome an accident and get back in the saddle again. Yes, I had a few minor triggers. Do I enjoy riding as much now as I used to before? No. I still carry that with us, we all do. That degree of caution. I have to really be in the right headspace to ride these days. But I still ride, because it's a challenge that was overcome. And why should I not get the wind in my beard once in a blue moon? So, with happy reminiscences, whatever it is, I've clearly lost the power of speech. It's probably about time I said goodnight. As always, thank you for listening to the ramblings of a wise old wizard. Take care, go well, and blessed be.